Hola Cuba! Welcome to the vibrant and colorful island of Cuba, a place where history, culture, and natural beauty blend seamlessly. From the bustling streets of Havana to the serene beaches, Cuba is a land of contrasts and surprises. Let's start our journey with Columbus and the discovery of paradise. In 1492, Christopher Columbus set sail across the Atlantic, hoping to find a new route to India. Little did he know, he was about to stumble upon a paradise that would change the course of history. Christopher Columbus, bless his little navigational socks, bumped into Cuba in 1492. He was mesmerized by the island's beauty and its potential for new opportunities. He thought he'd landed in India, awkward. Imagine the surprise on his face when he realized he was nowhere near the spices and riches he had promised his patrons. Imagine showing up, expecting spices and finding, well, more water. But Columbus, ever the optimist, saw potential in this new land. But hey, Cuba's way better than a consolation prize. With its lush landscapes, pristine beaches, and rich natural resources, it was a gem waiting to be discovered. Columbus, ever the poet, called it the most beautiful land that human eyes have ever seen. He was captivated by the island's charm and its potential for new beginnings. And honestly, who are we to argue? Even today, Cuba's natural beauty continues to enchant visitors from around the world. The guy was lost, sure, but he had an eye for beachfront property. He saw the potential for new settlements and trade routes that would benefit Spain. Columbus, thinking he'd struck gold in India, quickly claimed the island for Spain. He believed he had found a new world filled with untapped resources and opportunities. Little did he know the real treasure was the friends he made along the way. The indigenous people of Cuba welcomed Columbus and his crew, sharing their knowledge and culture. Just kidding. It was the tobacco and the sugar. These crops would become the backbone of Cuba's economy, driving trade and wealth for centuries. Okay, maybe not for the indigenous people, but that's a story for another time. The arrival of Columbus marked the beginning of a complex and often tragic history for the native population. Columbus's discovery kicked off a chain of events that would shape Cuba for centuries to come. From colonial rule to independence and from revolution to modern times, Cuba's history is a tapestry of resilience and change. Think of it like dropping a Mentos in a bottle of Coke. Except instead of a sugary explosion, you get centuries of colonialism, revolution, and enough intrigue to make a telenovela blush. Cuba's story is one of passion, struggle, and enduring spirit. Fiebre de azúcar, el diente dulce de España y una nación forjada. Spain, with a sweet tooth the size of the Iberian Peninsula, saw Cuba and thought, jackpot. The lush, fertile lands of Cuba were perfect for growing sugarcane, a crop that was in high demand back in Europe. The Spanish explorers were eager to capitalize on this golden opportunity. Sugarcane grew like weeds, and you know what that means? Time to make some serious cash. The fields were soon filled with row upon row of sugarcane, stretching as far as the eye could see. The potential for profit seemed limitless. Of course, someone had to do the work. Enter the transatlantic slave trade. The Spanish colonizers turned to Africa, forcibly transporting millions of Africans to work in the harsh conditions of the Cuban sugar plantations. Millions of Africans were ripped from their homes and shipped to Cuba. They endured unimaginable hardships during the journey, and upon arrival, faced grueling labor and inhumane treatment. It was brutal, inhumane, and frankly, a terrible way to run a sugar plantation. The slaves worked from dawn till dusk under the scorching sun, with little rest and even less compassion from their overseers. But here's the thing about forced labor, it breeds resentment. The enslaved people, despite their suffering, held on to their spirit and their desire for freedom, like a lot of resentment. The tension simmered beneath the surface, a constant reminder of the injustice they faced daily. This simmering anger, fueled by injustice and the yearning for freedom, would eventually boil over. The slaves began to organize, planning uprisings and revolts against their oppressors. But for now, Cuba was a sugarcane machine, churning out sweetness for Spain and bitterness for the people who called it home. The island's economy thrived on the backs of the enslaved, a dark chapter in history that would not be forgotten. Basta, Martí and the Seeds of Rebellion. Fast forward a few centuries and Cuba was basically Spain's teenager, moody, rebellious, and desperate to borrow the car keys, metaphorically speaking of course. Enter José Martí, Cuba's very own Che Guevara, but with better poetry. Martí was a writer, a thinker, a revolutionary rock star. He was all about Cuba Libre, a free Cuba by the people, for the people. Martí didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, eventually dying in a battle against the Spanish. Talk about commitment. His death, however, only served to further ignite the flames of revolution. Cuba was done with being Spain's sugar-coated colony. They wanted freedom, and they were willing to fight for it. Sección 4, La Revolución de Fidel Puros, Comunismo y una barba legendaria. Picture the 1950s and Cuba's itching for change. Enter Fidel Castro, a young lawyer with a taste for cigars, revolution, and a truly epic beard. Castro, along with Che Guevara, yes, Che Guevara, led a ragtag band of revolutionaries against the corrupt government. They overthrew the Batista regime in 1959, and suddenly, Cuba was communist. The US, known for its relaxed and chill attitude towards communism, was not thrilled. This new Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, was looking suspiciously red. Like really, really red. Sección 5 Guerra Fría Caliente, Cuba and La Mira. The Cold War was a tense time. The US and the Soviet Union were locked in a staring contest. Except instead of who blinks first, it was who pushes the button first. And guess who became the ultimate pawn in this geopolitical chess match? Yep, little old Cuba. Then came the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The Soviets decided to park some nukes in Cuba, just a stone's throw from Florida. The world held its breath. Was this it? Was it all going to end with a mushroom cloud over Havana? Thankfully, cooler heads, and some back-channel diplomacy, prevailed. The missiles were withdrawn, and the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. Sección 6 El periodo especial después de la fiesta, la resaca. The Soviet Union was Cuba's sugar daddy, providing economic support and cheap oil. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union went kaput. Remember that friend who promised to pay you back but then lost their wallet? Yeah, that was the Soviet Union. Cuba was left high and dry. This period, euphemistically called the special period in time of peace, was tough. Food shortages? Check. Power outages? Check. Economic hardship? Check, check, check. But Cubans are a resilient bunch. They tightened their belts, dusted off their bicycles, and found creative ways to survive. The special period forced Cuba to adapt, to rely on its own ingenuity, and to embrace, however reluctantly, some aspects of a market economy. Sección 7, Cuba hoy salsa, socialismo y la cuestión americana. So, where's Cuba at today? Still standing, still salsa-ing, still socialist. The streets of Havana are alive with the rhythm of salsa, a dance that embodies the spirit of the Cuban people. The Cuban flag waves proudly in the wind, a symbol of resilience and national pride. It's a country caught between its revolutionary past and an uncertain future. The murals of Che Guevara remind everyone of the revolutionary fervor that once swept the nation, while old posters echo the promises of a bygone era. Yet the future remains a question mark, filled with both hope and uncertainty. Tourism is booming, classic cars roam the streets, and the rhythm of life is a mix of resilience and hope. Tourists flock to Havana, enchanted by its nostalgic charm and vibrant culture. The classic cars, relics of a different time, continue to cruise the streets, a testament to Cuban ingenuity and resourcefulness. The US and Cuba, well, it's complicated. The relationship between these two nations has been a roller coaster of diplomatic highs and lows. The U.S. Embassy stands as a symbol of a complex and often strained relationship, while the Malecon seawall witnesses the ebb and flow of political tides. They've been doing that awkward "it's not you, it's me" dance for decades. The Cuban and American flags side by side tell a story of a long, complicated dance of diplomacy. Political protests in Havana reflect the ongoing struggle and the desire for change. The Obama administration tried to thaw the ice a bit, but then came the big freeze of 2017. The handshake between Barack Obama and Raul Castro was a moment of hope, a brief thaw in the icy relations, but the subsequent policies brought a chill that still lingers. Cuba today is a country of contradictions, vibrant yet restrained, hopeful yet weary. The vibrant street art in Havana tells stories of creativity and resilience, while the farmers working in the fields embody the hard work and perseverance of the Cuban people. It's a place where the past is ever present, and the future, like a good mojito, is best enjoyed one sip at a time. In the end, Cuba is a land where history and modernity coexist, where every moment is savored, much like a well-made mojito, enjoyed slowly and with appreciation.